So, Rahim, we have one of our very own Benefits Alliance member firms with Steve Kidd Insurance with Courtney Proudfoot coming in today. And I know that we've had a topic around group retirement plans and getting people to drive awareness of what it takes to implement one. And then once you've implemented one, getting that plan member engagement to actually participate in the plan. I know we've had this topic before, but I think it's worth doing that double click and seeing what other advisors are giving in terms of best practice tips. So I'm excited about Courtney coming in today. And what are you hoping to achieve today?
Yeah, I think it's great for us to have a perspective on what other advisors are doing in other geographies. So I know they have a really focused practice on plan member communication and education, and they really have carved out a niche there for themselves. So I'm really excited to hear what they do and how they communicate with members and how they assist clients on a one-to-one basis, whether it's the business owner or the administrators of the plan. I think it's a nice touch, and I'm looking forward to hearing more.
Awesome. Let's bring her in. Great. So, welcome, Courtney Proudfoot, with us today. And as we kick off today's podcast, Courtney, tell us a bit about yourself, a bit about your background.
Thanks, Caroline. So I've been in the employee benefit and pension landscape for just over 15 years now. I run a fairly even stream of business. So it's about 50% group benefits, 50% GRS. We're a relatively small firm located in southwestern Ontario. Um, and I think kind of we pride ourselves on having enough experience and resources to serve some of our big clients, but also small enough to have a relationship and customer service that can accommodate any size of business.
Wonderful. And we're very pleased to have you not only as a guest on our podcast, but as a recent member firm that has joined Benefits Alliance. So all of our members with Benefits Alliance are those that specialize in the group space. So we're very pleased to have you as a guest today. And I guess actually start off by asking Rahim, when you think about the landscape, today we've been meeting with different guests and we're all about driving financial literacy and awareness. When we look at across Canada, the number of plan sponsors that would actually have a group retirement and group benefits plan in place. What do you see out there? What do you think the opportunity is?
I think the opportunity is quite large. So we've had guests before from different record keeper platforms who've done a lot of research into this space. And I think, especially if you look at the SME segment, it would be more than 50% of plan sponsors definitely don't have a group retirement plan. Hopefully, on the benefit side, is a bit more. I'm confident enough in saying companies over 500 or so employees likely has a group retirement plan. I'd say that number may be well over 70%. But we have new businesses opening up every day, and I think there's a great opportunity for us as advisors to be able to educate our clients in terms of what it means to have a group retirement plan, right? So the obvious thing is making sure that your employees have something to rely on once they've retired, because our social security system was not designed to be 100% of what they need, but also educating them, because I get the feeling when I talk to new clients or prospective clients, they're afraid of the word pension or group retirement program because they feel it's going to be very cumbersome to implement, and then even on an ongoing basis. So there's two things. There's many things we can do, but in short, I think there's a tremendous opportunity for clients to explore having a group retirement program.
Amazing. And Courtney, when we look at that and the opportunity where you are here in Ontario, tell us about the passion and where, what drives the people on your team and what you're seeing out there with plan sponsors, whether they've got plans or not today. What's And how does that translate into your approach and conversations just to get things going with someone?
Yeah, I think building off of what Raheem just said, it's very common to see a small or mid-sized company that have group benefits. I think they know that that needs to be a part of their overall rewards program for their employees to attract and retain employees. And quite often the conversation will come up, well, do you have a group retirement plan or do you have any form of savings for your employees? And there's lots of studies that show that employees, if they don't have a group retirement plan, like Raheem mentioned, they simply rely on our government benefits, which are simply not enough. So often that conversation starts from a very simple high level education to the employer to say, this is what the projected cost would be from a plan sponsor or an employer, we would recommend you contribute to a plan, and then just build it kind of backwards to say it's not as complicated as would think. There's not a ton of administration that goes into it. All the carriers that support you will be available to run that platform for you. We support you. We provide them with what the advisor that's looking after the plan. I would say most of our new groups are quite often smaller companies that have never had a plan in place before. A lot of the large groups, like Raheem mentioned, 500 plus, it might just be having the opportunity to change from the previous advisor or carrier. It's not necessarily that you're finding a lot of those big new companies that don't have an existing plan in place, because it's again a little bit more standard to have that in large companies, but huge opportunity in Canada for those small to mid-sized companies, and certainly so many of them that don't have any plans in place.
Yeah, definitely. So as you go through the process and start talking to, many of our listeners today will be business owners that don't have any plans in place. And what are some of the questions, the first few questions as you engage with the conversation that are likely going through the minds of our listeners today as they consider implementing a group retirement plan?
That's a great question. I think one of the first things that I always ask a plan sponsor is generally, what feedback are you getting from your employees? Have they asked for a plan before? Do we know that there's going to be buy in from employees? I'm a big believer that employees should also contribute to this plan and have a matching formula in place so that it's not just dollars from the employer being added. It's far more successful if the employee has to put in X percent to be able to get matched that amount as well. So generally starts with, what feedback from your loyal employees are they looking for? Then generally the next step from there is let's do a little bit of benchmarking. Let's determine for whatever industry you're in is what tends to be typical. It's really easy to look at overall payroll and determine what their cost for an employer to contribute on an annual basis would potentially be depending on the matching formula. And then just from there, just determining what program makes the best sense for them. So we have pretty simple charts that explain all the different types of products available to them. And again, you don't have to overcomplicate things. And I find even with plan sponsor, you just got to keep it simple. They need to know that this isn't going to be a huge workload or change to their day-to-day life, but how can we support them beyond that? So again, similar conversations. Well, what do you think is going to make this program the most successful? I always say it's not for us to assume that we know what the business needs. So ask the client what they are looking to accomplish, and then we can provide all the solutions to go from there.
Yeah, and to kind of add to Courtney's point, um, the angle around costs, because it's important, right? These are small organizations and they have thin margins, and they're maybe not even financially profitable. But when you show plan sponsors the research around, plan members are asking for group retirement programs over salary increases, right? I think there was a study done by Hoop, Commonwealth, and Abacus were involved. I think when you show them that your employees would rather have this as a more tax effective way of providing compensation. You could show them that, people are asking for this instead of a salary. Another thing that I find quite useful is kind of using that health and wealth angle, right? If you have employees who are financially worried, when they come to work, they're going to be inefficient. And when they are spending on the work time thinking about their finances, they're less productive. So it's costing you one way or another. A great way to think about a group retirement program. And I think, Courtney, you mentioned kind of total rewards. It's just that it shouldn't be a second fiddle to group benefits. They go hand in hand together. And there are a lot of business owners who realize that. And that is something that's great. I hope as you have a new evolution of business owners, that's going to be a common theme for them. I know US plan sponsors, I work with a lot of them who are opening up shops here. And for them, they're very used to that 401k environment. So even if they have a satellite office here, 3, 4 employees, a program that mimics their 401k is an automatic. So it's all about us as the advisor community having the right conversation with the client around the health and wealth and our social security not being enough, because clients have told me, look, why am I paying into CPP if I have to do more in a supplementary group retirement program? Like, isn't that 5% enough? And when you show them that no, CPP is going to be 30% of someone's retirement income if they max out, they tend to realize, okay, you know what, I need to figure out a way to do this, because 25 years down the road, employees that have worked with you their whole career are not going to have anything. So I think the messaging can improve from our end as well.
Yeah, we actually include a slide on some of our education. Um, we have an education session for new enrollments, but also an education session on just the basics to retirement forecasting and planning. And one of the slides actually shows what the average CPP and OAS payouts will be when you're in retirement. So it's a projection. And I always say to the room or the Zoom call that I'm on, if you guys look at these numbers, could you live off of that today? Could you live off of that in retirement? And I've never seen a hand go up to say that they can. And then the next slide is generally, okay, here's what your program is, which is great. Look at the free dollars coming in from your employer. Look what you're contributing. And then the next slide is actually, this is what we're recommending you contribute. So now we have an avenue where you see the value and hey, guess what? It's going to be convenient. You can do it right off of payroll deductions. It's going to go right into this plan. You don't have to have multiple accounts open in multiple places. And it just drives home they had the opportunity, they're getting that support from their employer, and now there's more of a reason for plan members really to take the blinders off for a moment and say, what does retirement look like? And then coming back to what you said earlier, Raheem, there is a lot of studies that show if someone is financially stressed and it's not just about the paycheck at the end of the day, there's so many reasons why someone can be stressed about finances, but retirement is a huge worry for majority of Canadians. And let's be honest, people don't want to work forever. So we're building a piece of that total reward like we mentioned, and we're just here to support them along that journey.
And if you look at, I think Manulife had a recent article out on target date funds, but the gist of it was longevity risk, right? Like, human beings are now going to be living longer than they've ever lived. So if you still want to retire at 65, it's very likely that you will be spending a third of your life in retirement, right? So as you live longer, you need a bigger nest egg, right? And you need to start at 25 or 30 to have a shot at replacing your income at somewhat of an adequate level. So I know we don't like to scare clients. It's not the way we want to get them to have programs, but they need to have the reality, because I believe they care about their employees very much. And if they knew that, they would do something. Now, you mentioned, Courtney, the benchmarking report. I think that's a really powerful tool that tells them your peers are doing something. But we try to not 100% shame them with that, and say, look, you don't have to be RBC. You don't have to do a 6% matching, right? You could start at You could start at 2, you could start at 3, and make your way up as you become more profitable or your business improves. So letting clients know that it doesn't have to be like a Rolls Royce plant tomorrow. You could start slow, build up to it, and as you said, employer contributions matching to what the employees put in. Even at 2 and 2, you're looking at a 4% annually that you never had before. So I think if you put all of that together, there is a way to get their thought process going towards putting something together.
Yeah. Courtney, I loved the way you described how you show step by step, like here's what the government benefits would be, here's what this program looks like, and here's what additional can be done. What's some of the water cooler talk that you hear, after such a presentation? Like, I imagine that opens people's eyes quite a bit and actually gains. I think I want to speak to the appreciation that a plan member would see from their employer in a new light. Like, okay, this is the help that I'm getting as I work day in and day out, planning for my future. So, what's some of that feedback you hear?
Well, one of the things we make sure that plan members, while they attend these sessions, are aware of that there's always a resource for them to speak with an advisor after the session because people always think about their own scenarios. And quite often, people aren't comfortable asking even the simplest of questions in a group setting or online. And it's private and confidential. Everyone's situation is a bit different. But we do have, I would say, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I would say probably 30 to 40% of plan members, once we tell them, hey, we're available to meet one on one or to answer any questions. We have a lot of uptake on plan members who maybe haven't attended a session in the past, reach out to get some additional support. The common questions are, you know what, I never really thought about how much I should be saving for retirement. That's super common. Another common question is, or statement I would say would be, I never reached out because I didn't know where to start, or I felt like I don't understand retirement forecasting or planning adequately. And I will say it's not one sector, one gender, one age group. It is everyone across the board. We can be dealing with high-end executives of companies, and they're one of the first ones to say, "Hey, I don't understand what my risk profile is. I don't understand where my money's being invested." So I think that the most important piece, coming back to the water cooler conversation, is that they're having the conversation, that they've started asking questions and tried to understand how their scenario is impacted or what their scenario actually is. That's the most important piece, just to get that conversation started.
That makes a lot of sense because, yeah, in a population, you're going to have everyone from who's just graduated out of school and they've got student debt, right through people, young families having children and buying houses and different life events happening, health conditions, all sorts of things that all of that impacts your finances. So great to know you've got more of that individual, personalized approach that can make a difference as to whether someone can starts getting in the plan or not, right? They might have different fears or concerns about starting something. So, um, on that note, what are some of the um, most common, I'd say, fears or apprehensions that are able to be, dispelled that actually promote action? Because where I'm coming from is participation, right? You can put the best plan in place with even a 2% matching, like you both have said, even 4% total, but what's it for if people don't take that step, right? So how do you what are you hearing there, and post meeting, like what type of participation rates do you see after providing that service?
So we have what's called an enrollment session that we provide to all of our GRS clients. So it's actually a very simple step by step what the employee needs to know to get enrolled in the plan. And we did kind of a survey, I would say probably about 5 to 7 years ago, with some of our larger clients that, for whatever reason, had a higher percentage than normal of employees that never did enroll. So one of the most common pieces was, well, I just didn't really know where to put my money or invest my money. I didn't understand what a mutual fund was. I didn't understand what type of risk. And I thought I would always come back to it. And then I never did. So that's very common. A lot of the younger employees didn't necessarily see the value because they thought it was a tomorrow problem, not a today problem. But again, you can put that problem off and it can become 5 to 7 years of working for the same employer and not taking advantage of a plan. So we actually took that feedback, and when we built our enrollment sessions for our GRS clients, we essentially built it in kind of 3 segments. So the first segment is, what do you need to know to get enrolled? Here's your enrollment package. Here's what the contribution formula is. So all the plan features, because every plan has its own plan design features. The second piece is, this is something called a risk profile or a risk questionnaire, and understand what their risk tolerance is for this particular plan. In addition to that, it will then say, okay, based on how you answered this questionnaire, here's how we would recommend you invest your money. So just simplify it so that they understand that getting started is the first piece. Understanding where they're investing their money is the second piece. And then the third piece is, how do they get support ongoing? So, how do they log on to the carrier's portal, see their investments, know where to get the common tax slips and all the things that they can do on a regular basis? And then we always show, the final slide is really, what are your responsibilities as a plan member? Our recommendation is, at a very minimum, you should be looking at your statement once a year. You should try and understand what that statement means, and be aware of, what fluctuations can look like. How often do you need to revisit where you're invested? You don't have to do it as regularly as one might think, but you should be aware, as you age and your risk tolerance changes, that it might be time to look at this again. And here's the responsibilities of you as a plan member, what you need to worry about, and here's what your plan sponsor or the carrier is going to look after, from who does what in this relationship, essentially. So that's, I don't know if that's too long-winded, but that's kind of how we try and build a framework so everyone knows exactly what their responsibilities are.
Yeah, no, very clear in sort of that stepped process. And sounds like you have some personalized videos that help people through each of those stages. Um, can you speak to how you work with the plan sponsors, like the HR department and the plan sponsors, to actually wrap all of this up and communicate? Because communication is key. So I know that your firm does quite a bit in that area as well. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, so a lot of the smaller or mid-sized companies, their plan administrators wear many hats within their firms. So our job as the advisor and brokerage that takes care of their plan is just to take as much off of their plate as we possibly can, because they're busy human beings. So quite often it's, tell us what your process is and let us know how we can fit into that. And if there's anything that we can remove from their workload, we're going to do that. If there's any growing pains in terms of, and this is actually more for some of our larger firms, often there's higher turnover. There might be many bodies doing the same role within certain HR departments, as an example. So similarly, we're doing regular touch base meetings, or as regularly as they want, because sometimes there's such thing as too many meetings. So let's figure out a communication strategy of, how often do you want to hear from us? What do you need from a support perspective? If we know we have a huge hiring going on for whatever reason, we're going to do additional education sessions that aren't just the pre-recorded sessions. Then carve out what additional support that they would like to see from us. And this is largely driven by employee feedback at most company levels. So, how often do they want to hear from an advisor, and what type of content do they want to hear? So, most of our companies, regardless of size, we're doing an annual plan refresher, I would call it. And so, we will just go through, anyone can log on, they can listen to our here's how the markets have done this past year. Here's a reminder how you log on to your account and you view your situation, and just some, I would say, 5 to 10 reminders of things that they should be aware of in their plan. In addition to that, if we have a plan that is really education heavy, we might carve out the 101 to retirement planning. Or this past year, I'm sure it came as no surprise, but we had quite a bit of volatility in our markets. So we had a ton of plan sponsors reach out and say, "Hey, can we add an additional session this year to just calm some of those nerves of some of the employees. So it's always based on what the employer or plan sponsor wants, but we're not waiting for them to come to us. We're proactively reaching out to say, "Hey, are we good? Any additional sessions needed?" And I would say our relationship with the plan administrators or the HR folks are just as strong as with the decision makers or the plan sponsors, and we certainly interact with those folks more on a regular day-to-day basis than we would with the plan sponsor, as an example.
And Courtney, you guys seem to be doing a really good job on the plan member side. Do you also help in the governance process with annual reviews and facilitating pension committee meetings and things like that?
Yeah. So that's part of our annual review process. That's not really part of our education piece. That would be just our support platform that we provide. So every GRS client has an annual scheduled meeting. We work with the carrier that has the plan in place for their planalytics or their plan summary for the year. When there was cap guideline changes, we made sure that we met with each plan sponsor so that we had done our due diligence, they had done their due diligence. In addition to that, negotiating fees on behalf of the client for the management fees, often it doesn't happen annually because of assets under administration don't necessarily warrant it, but if we have a plan sponsor that's increased a matching formula, as an example, or we've seen the AUM grow significantly, we're proactively doing that on behalf of our clients before they're asking for it. So I would say on average, our large clients, we're trying to do a reprice every 2 years. We don't always get it, but that's what we're asking for. And then our small clients, it's on an as needed basis. But that piece comes into our annual review meeting with each of those clients.
And you mentioned earlier in the conversation when you meet with the plan sponsor who's looking to set up a plan, you have a chart that walks them through all the different products. Curious to see if what you find is happening in your neck of the woods versus what's happening, let's say on my end. What are clients choosing between an RSP, pension, DPSP? Any insight there?
The most common in our world has been an RSP with a TFSA add-on.
Okay, and are DPSPs popular with clients that you're dealing with, or they don't love them that much?
So we have, I wouldn't know the percentage of our block that has a DPSP. Majority of the DPSP plans that I manage have been long-standing DPSPs. We haven't done as many new installs on DPSPs in quite some time.
I was going to say, just for our listeners who may not have, you know me, Raheem. I'm always like, tell us that's what that acronym. It's a deferred profit sharing program, right?
Yeah, and all of the different programs, for the benefit of our clients, have their own pros and their own, let's call it cons. There's no right or wrong. I was just curious to see how Courtney's clients are choosing which product lines they participating, and in terms of new clients from a carrier perspective, and we don't have to call out names, but I'm wondering if I could ask you, do clients prefer long-standing, well-known names, or are your clients completely okay with new robo advisors, or let's call them more fintechs?
That's a very interesting question because I would say up until about 18 months ago in my career, the long-standing names are where I think most clients gravitated towards. Or if they had a GB plan with Sun, they wanted to have everything under one umbrella. The interesting thing, and maybe I don't know if it's just with my block, but you're far more able, or it's more common for a group benefit plan to change carriers every several years. Whereas our GRS clients, they tend to stay with the same carrier, especially once those assets are growing. So I'm not a big believer in just recommending who their current carrier is on the GB side because that might not necessarily be where they are forever. Um, the new lower fee, easy, financial tech type companies out there, I've probably done more of those plans in the last year than I've done in 15 years combined. Will it be the right fit for those clients forever? I don't think so. That's just my opinion. I think it's a really good starting spot for some of those clients. And I even planted the seed with some of them to say, hey, when we get to a certain assets under management and we can customize your plan a bit more like the larger carriers can, then we maybe make the jump in 5 or 6 years from now. But yeah, it's an evolving landscape. It's changing pretty quickly. So, but I like change in my world. I feel like it's if we're not staying on top of change, we're going to get left behind. So ultimately, we always show a couple options for each client. We don't overwhelm them. We try and show them, here's your option if we go with the big carrier, and here's your option if we go with, this small name that you've never heard of before, and here's the pros and cons to working with either one of them. And we ultimately let the plan sponsor decide what's going to be best for them.
Great.
So, my final question, and I'll pose it to both of you, seeming as you're both in the role of advisor. At the end of the day, once a plan sponsor is put in a plan, whether it's GB, GRS, and you're trying to show that total rewards, like we started the conversation, how do you best convey that value to plan members to really spotlight the value that a plan sponsor has provided financially for employees, the actual value of the total package? What do you each do there?
I don't know if we convey it by we certainly don't convey it in like a dollars conversation. I know some uh, plan sponsors, we can convey to them if total cost of overall payroll, what their benefit or their GRS cost might be to the company. But from a plan member standpoint, I know we mentioned education earlier. Um, so it's easy for an advisor or a carrier to come in and kind of toot the horn of the plan sponsor without them being a part of the conversations. And education can mean a lot of things, but from my standpoint is if an employee doesn't understand, the education is lost and they don't understand the value. So from a GB perspective, it's as simple as here is everything that your plan offers you as a plan member. It's not just your prescription drugs and your dental. Here's all the other things. Maybe we've implemented a EAP plan or some virtual healthcare or all the things that you don't know what employees are looking for. So first step is here's the benefit booklet. Here's all the things that you have. So making sure they're aware of that. On the group retirement services standpoint, similarly, it's highlighting what the employer's putting in and making sure they understand the value of that with that matching formula, or if there's not a matching formula and they're just putting money in, and then just understanding how not just today but longer term what this is going to potentially build for them and that they have access to. So I don't know if it really is a summary of this is exactly what you're getting, but we just want to make sure everyone understands. Because when we take over a new group, if it's come from somewhere else, the most common thing we hear is, I have been a part of this plan for X amount of years and I never understood what I had, whether it be group benefits or group retirement services. Because quite often a booklet was handed to someone and they never had any information beyond that provided.
Add to that, from a tangible perspective, I remember very early in my career, I worked at a company called Invesco Trimark. It's an asset management firm, and I was really, really young and kind of bummed out about my base salary as one is at 23, 24. One of the cool things that Invesco used to do, and I think is to tackle that very problem, is to do a total reward statement. And when I got my total reward statement, I got a much better idea of what the employer is doing for me, right? Quantified were my RSP contributions, the value of my benefits, and I got a grand scheme approach. So I know it's difficult for smaller employers to build total reward statements, but I think that's a really effective way of letting your employees know what the overall benefit is for them being a part of these programs. So that's one. And adding on to what Courtney said, even now as a Penmore employee, when I open up my mobile app, I'm able to see my contributions and my employer contributions. And the longer I work here, And as the accounts grow, that's a meaningful amount that my employer has put for me in my retirement plan. So carriers do a pretty good job of bucketing employee employer contributions. And I think from a plan sponsor perspective, if you're worried your employees are not online and they're not looking at their statements and they're not able to see that, maybe you don't have to do it every year, but maybe every 3, 4 years, work with an organization, an external payroll company or someone. And I know a lot of advisors have the capacity to build those total reward statements for their clients. I think they're worth the cost because I know for a fact everyone looks at their T4. And if you made that a component of your annual slips, people will look at it because there'll be a paper they're holding and they'll say to them, what their total remuneration is, so to speak. So those would be two ways in which a plan sponsor, I think, can communicate effectively the value of their total reward programs.
Good. Well, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure having you on today, Courtney, and for sharing this topic with you, Raheem, as well. I think it's so important to Canadians to have awareness and access to plans and maximize their benefits by engaging and understanding. So thank you for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Courtney. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, you too.
This has been the Benefits Alliance Voice. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your network and be sure to check out the podcast notes for any additional materials.